So example 2 here is the properties of proportions. That's that stuff that was in that first box on the other side. Okay, so they say here, if a over 4 equals 12 over b, then b over 12 equals blank. Okay, so I can do this really easily in my head. I know that 12 over b is my second part of the proportion, and they've moved that to the first part, right, and flipped it upside down. So I would take the first part and move it to the last part and flip it upside down, and so wouldn't that give me 4 over a? And that is so much easier than the way they work this out, okay? But that's all right. It says to figure out what the second ratio would be, you first cross multiply. A times b is ab equals 4 times 12, which is 48, right? But then we know that we need to get rid of that b, and we need to we need to get rid of the a, and we need to get the 12 in the denominator, right? Because I'm going from this to that, b over 12. And so don't I need to get rid of the a from the numerator and get a 12 in the denominator? So I could do that by dividing by 12a. Okay, so I'm going to divide each side by 12a. That puts the 12 in the denominator, and it gets rid of the a. Okay, so these a's cancel, leaving me with b over 12. And let's see, does 48 divide by 12? Yeah, it'll go in there 4 times, so that gives me 4 over a. Does that make sense? Do you see how they did that? So, not terribly hard, but my way was much easier, I think. So it's up to you. Okay, take a look at number 3. It says solving for a variable. Now this is what you're used to doing. You've done this for a long time in middle school, okay? It says 2 over 5 equals n over 35. So to solve this, we would use our cross product property, right? We'd cross multiply. Okay, thank you. And so I would start out with 5 over n. I like my variable to be on the left, so I always try to start with the variable on the left if I can. And then 2 times 35 would be the other side. Okay, so 5n equals 2 times 35 is 70. Then I would need to divide both sides by 5, and 70 divided by 5 is 14. Very good. And so n equals 14 would be my answer.
Didn't you just 2 times 35 divided by 5?
Mm-hmm. Same thing. Okay, any questions? All right. So let's go on then to part B. Now this might look a little different. Hopefully you did some of this in middle school, but that isn't always the case. So if I cross multiply the 3 times the x, I'm going to get 3x. But then I also need to multiply 2 times x plus 1. Okay, but since x plus 1 is the entire numerator, I have to put it in parentheses because I want to multiply the whole thing by 2. Okay, so bless you. So that's using our cross product property again. And then I need to use what property to get this solved? Distributive. We're going to distribute that too, so that's distributive property. Okay, so that gives me 3x equals 2 times x is 2x plus 2 times 1 is 2. And then wouldn't I simply subtract the 2x from the 3x to get x, right? So I'm going to subtract that 2x. 3x minus 2x is x, and then that will equal 2. So my answer is x equals 2. Any questions there? Okay. So this next problem is kind of crazy. It says a photo that is 8 inches wide and 5 1/3 inches high is enlarged to a poster that is 2 feet wide and 1 1/3 feet high. What is the ratio of the height of the photo to the height of the poster? So I only want to look at the heights, right? Of course, those have to be the difficult ones, right? So I'm going to say the ratio of the height of the photo. So this one is the height of the photo, right? And so that's going to be 5 1/3. on the top, and then to the height of the poster, so that's going to be 1 1/3 in the bottom. So now we need to simplify it, and I know 5 1/3, I'm going to horseshoe it. That's 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16, so that's going to be 16/3, right? Do the same thing to the denominator. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, so that's 4/3. Ooh, yuck. A double-decker, right? So could you say that this means 16/3 divided by 4/3? Is that true? Okay, so I could do 16/3 divided by 4/3. But do you remember from middle school when you divide fractions, this second fraction has to flip, right? So that's 16/3 times 3/4. The 3's cancel, right? So that would be 16/4, but 16/4 reduces, doesn't it, to 4/1? So that would be 4 inches to 1 foot. So there's one ratio. Now, if they told us to put these in the same unit, couldn't I say that would be 4 inches to 12 inches? Because 1 foot is 12 inches. And then that would reduce to 1/3. So if we had to have the same units, that would be 1 inches to 3 inches. Interesting, huh? That 4 inches to 1 foot is the same thing as 1 inch to 3 inches. Anyway, maybe that's just to me. It says write two expressions that are equivalent to m/4 equals n/11. Now they're talking about using those properties that we saw in that first box on the other side of the paper. Okay, so we're actually going to write all 4 of them, because if I were to give this to you, I don't know which 2 you would pick. Does that make sense? Okay, so if I were to cross multiply this, I would get 4n equals 11m. So that's one correct expression. Or if I flipped them upside down, remember that was one of our ways, that would be 4/m equals 11/n. So there's another correct way. Or the other thing that they did, remember, is we went side to side. So wouldn't that be m/n equals 4/11? And then the last one, that's that crazy one where they added the numerator and denominator and put it over the denominator. So that would be m plus 4/4 equals n plus 11/11. So any of those would be correct. Do you have any questions on this page? Okay, we're going to go on then to the last. It says using proportions. 2 cities are 3.5 inches apart on a map with a scale of 1 inch equals 50 miles. Find the actual distance. So I know that my scale is 1 inch to 50 miles. So right here it says let D represent the actual distance, which is your 3.5 inches. And oh no, I'm sorry, that would be what we're looking for. But on the map, it's 3.5 inches. And then our scale is the map distance to the actual distance, so that would be 1 inch equals 50 miles, right? Okay, so to set up our proportion, we would do the map distance, which is 3.5 inches, over the actual distance, which is our D, equals our scale, 1/50. And then I know I'm just going to cross multiply. 1 times D is D. And then I would multiply 50 times 3.5. And that's our cross product property that allows us to do that. Okay, and then, 50 times 3.5. Now, I could do a lot of work and like horseshoe and all this kind of stuff, but couldn't I just change that to 3.5 and put 50 times 3.5 in the calculator, right? And if you do that, you're going to get 175. So the actual distance on land is 175 miles. So the cities are actually 175 miles apart. Make sense? Questions? Okay, let's go on then to our last quick checks. And on this first part, quick check 3A and B, I want y'all to go ahead and solve those, and then we'll check our answers. And while you're solving those, I'm going to hand out the assignment. Okay, so we're going to solve these using the cross product property. And so I always like to have my variable first. I'm going to start with the 20 times z. So 20 times z would be 20z equals 5 times 3, which I know is 15. So then I divide both sides by 20. And so I know z equals 15 over 20, but doesn't that reduce by 5? Very good. So it'd be 3 over 4 because 5 goes into 15 3 times and 5 goes into 24 times. Now, I would also accept 0.75 in case you had put it in your calculator. Okay. All right, so then I'm also going to, over on this side, I'm going to multiply 18 times n first, just because I like to have that distributive stuff on the other side. So now I'm going to do 6 times n plus 6. Don't forget your parentheses or else you'll get messed up. Okay, so that's going to be 18n equals 6 times n is 6n plus 6 times 6 is 36. Then I'm going to subtract the 6n so I can get my n's together. And that's going to be 12n equals 36. Divide by 12. And so n equals 3. Any questions there? Excellent. So then we'll move on to our last problem, which says, recall example 4. You want to make a new map with a scale of 1 inch equals 35 miles. Remember the other one said 1 inch equals 50 miles. Two cities that are actually 175 miles apart are to be represented on your map. What would be the distance in inches between the cities on the new map? Okay, so I just need to set up a new proportion using this scale instead of the other one, right? And so I'm going to do, remember we did inches to miles? And so I'm going to use this scale, 1 inch to 35 miles equals. Now, they have given me the actual distance, 175 miles, so I need to put that in the denominator, and in the numerator is my x. Okay? So now I cross multiply, that's going to give me 35x equals 175, then divide by 35, and so you will find that x equals 5 inches. Any questions there? Okay, if you'll look at that assignment that I gave you, you might want to jot down some notes here. Okay? For number 1, it's a pretty easy problem. You're finding the ratio. However, for some reason, and I don't know why, I don't know if it's people don't want to read those 4 lines of words or what, but they tend to skip number 1. So please put a star by it or something so you remember to do number 1. Okay? Then for 2, 3, and 4, it says find the actual dimensions of each room. The dimensions means the length times the width, okay? So, or the length and the width, I should say. And so you're going to have 2 answers for number 2, the length and the width. And you're going to have 2 answers for number 3 and 2 answers for number 4. Okay, so jot down a little note there to remind yourself you need 2 answers on each of those, the length and the width. For 5 through 10, those are asking you about those properties that are in that first box on our notes. And so you're just going to write true or false, but you might want to keep those notes handy so you can check back on those properties. Okay? For 11 through 16, you're solving for x, so that should be pretty easy. And then 17 and 18 says for each rectangle, find the ratio of the longer side to the shorter side. So make sure you do longer to shorter. Then it says for 19 and 20, complete each of the following. Those have to do with those properties again. So make sure that you keep your notes handy. Okay? Do you have any questions? Alrighty, you got the rest of the time to work.